Hello friends, it's Chari. Today I have a trio of cards to share that are inspired by holiday lights. I love holiday lights during the holiday time, so I'm pulling out all of my string of lights products. I have the string of lights backdrop, the mini string of lights, and the string of lights dies, and I am going to make some cards inspired by holiday lights. I'm using the extra bulbs add-on to cut out all the little bulbs in a timely manner because this cuts out 5 bulbs at a time. And I have a bunch of scraps of cardstock here in a rainbow of colors. So I have guava, fake tan, sunflower, cilantro, tide pool, and sugar plum. And I just cut out 15 bulbs of each color. So now I need to work on kind of the bases that I'll use. So I'm cutting my string of lights backdrop. I'm cutting this from some white cardstock. So my strings will be white, and this will actually allow me to layer the bulbs directly onto the background without needing the extra little solid bulb, and the white will show through the little shine marks on my bulbs. I also want to cut out the mini string of lights, and I will cut out 3 of these because I'm actually going to cut them apart, and we're going to use them to decorate a stitched snowflake. So I am also going to cut this stitched snowflake out of white as well. For the large bulbs, I want to cut those solid bases out of white again so I can layer them, and that shine mark will be white when I put the color on top. So here's all my white pieces. These are kind of the base pieces that I'm going to go with as I start to add all of my colorful bulbs. For the background of all 3 cards, I am using some blue Jay cardstock. I was inspired by a design I saw online of a snowflake made out of light bulbs, and it was on this dark blue background, and it was so striking and so pretty. So that kind of was my inspiration for my cards today. Also, I recently went to the Winter Lights show at the North Carolina Arboretum here where I live, and I was inspired by that as well to create these holiday cards with the colorful lights. So I have a piece of the cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Then I cut one with the largest of these stitch rectangles, which is also 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then the third one I cut with the largest outside in stitch rectangle, so we'll get a little border. For all 3 of these, I'm using my white metallic watercolor to add some flecks of splatter in the background. It gives it this really nice snowy look. So here are the 3 backgrounds and kind of where the pieces are going to go. And then for each of these, I'm going to use a very large sentiment. So I'll use the Scripty Mary, the Scripty Joy along with their new outlines, and then also I will use Henry's ABCs to spell out the word cheer for my snowflake card. So for my first card here with the string of lights backdrop, I'm cutting out this 3rd string, so that is where my Scripty Mary will go. And I'm actually just going to set that aside because I'm going to use it on another card. I am going to go ahead and put this background onto a card base. Now this is the one that is just cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It doesn't have any stitching detail, and that's because that would get covered up by the backdrop. I'm going to go ahead and put all these panels onto my card bases. So this is the one cut with the outside in stitch rectangle, so it has that nice little white border. And then this is the one cut with the large stitch rectangle. So it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to put that on that card base, and I actually needed to trim it up a little bit. You can see I've got some white peeking out, but that's really easy to do with a X-Acto knife and a ruler. So we're just going to trim that right off, and now we have that nice blue background. So back to the first card here with the string of lights backdrop. I'm putting liquid glue around all 4 sides of the frame, and then I'm adding some glue to the back of the bulbs. I'm actually not putting any glue on the strings themselves. I think that the bulbs will hold this in place just fine, and I don't think it's necessary to try and put glue on that really thin die cut. So once I get this lined up on that background, it's really easy to kind of shift around with that liquid glue. I'm just going to push down all the bulbs and then set a block on top. So now I'm ready to add my colorful bulbs, and I'm just using liquid glue. I do make sure to put that glue on the side where that little shine mark is not, so that I don't have any glue ooze out through that hole in the die cut. And I'm also making sure to shift my colors around so that I don't have two pink bulbs beside each other or two yellow bulbs, so that the colors are nice and evenly distributed across my card. So next I'll move on to the snowflake. One of my favorite things about the winter lights display at the Arboretum is that it is not specific to any holiday. They have flowers, they have animals, there's a unicorn and a rainbow, and of course snowflakes, which are not specific to any holiday. And I just really like the idea of it being a light display for everyone. So I'm using the mini string of lights so that I can still have the socket attached to the light because that is the part that I'm going to glue to my snowflake. So I'm just cutting these apart. I did cut 3 strings of lights. I probably ended up with way more than I needed, but I just figured it was better to be prepared. So to create my snowflake with the winter lights, I am going to glue these bulbs onto the backside. So I have flipped my snowflake over. I'm putting little dots of glue onto those little arms sticking out on each side. Now I'm doing the 2 side pieces first, and then I'll do the very tips afterwards, and I'll show you why. So I'm gluing that little socket piece of the light bulb to the back side of the snowflake, and then I'm going to do the one right next to it, and this is why I'm doing these first, so that I can make sure that they don't touch each other. I just wanted to make sure that this worked before I did too much gluing, and you just have to make sure that they don't overlap. But they fit there really nicely, and I'm just working my way around, adding those little light bulbs to the little arms of the snowflake. So once I get all the way around with these ones on each side, I'm going to flip my snowflake back over to the back side, and then I'll add some glue, just a little dot of glue to those ones that stick out at the points. I did find it was easier to pick up those little bulbs from my little pinch bowl here, so that's why I dumped those back in. So now I can go through and do those 6 little points, and I will have a snowflake full of the white bulbs. Now these are the bases, so we'll add the colors to them once we get all those bulbs on. So there is my snowflake all ready to add my colors to. So just as I did before, I'm going to add some liquid glue. I'm making sure it's on the left side of the bulb so that it doesn't ooze out of that little shine mark that's cut in each bulb. And then I'm just going to work my way around and go in the rainbow order that I have my bulbs in. And once I get all of these bulbs glued into place, we're going to have this beautiful, colorful snowflake. And I really love how this turned out. Now I wanted to make it a little sturdier, so I cut out 2 more snowflakes. I'm going to layer one on the front so it's nice and clean and kind of has a little dimension from the light bulbs, but I'm also going to layer one on the back. So I'm going to do that one first, and basically that will take the little light socket piece of my light bulbs and sandwich it between 2 snowflakes. So I'm just adding some glue all over, and then I'll layer one onto the back side. This will also give it a little bit of dimension off the background of the card without having to use foam tape. So just a little bit of thickness to the die cut. And then now I can add some dots of glue to the front. And I just like adding some dots right at those major points. And then I can layer that last snowflake over top. This would also be pretty, I think, out of some pixie dust cardstock, so we have that sparkle. I think that would be really pretty too. You could do either way. So I'll just lay a block so that dries nice and flat, and now my snowflake is ready to go on a card. I thought I would show you though, if you wanted to add even more bulbs to the center, you could add some on these little points here and have even more colors. So I'm not going to do that on my card today, but I thought I would show it to you in case you wanted a little more color on your winter lights snowflake. So I'll go ahead and put this onto the card base. It's ready to go, and I'm just adding dots of glue to the back of each light bulb and some of those points on the snowflake as well. And we'll just pop those right into the center, of course, a little bit towards the top so that I have room for a sentiment below. Now I'm moving on to that third card with those big holiday bulbs. So I need to layer my colorful bulbs onto the bases. You can see that white will show through that little shine mark. And then for the tops of my bulbs, I cut the tops that have the little loop so you could hang them because they're going to kind of hang off the top of the card. And I cut that from some silver sparkle cardstock so it has a little bit of shimmer, which I think is really fun. And of course, there are 3 sizes of tops to each bulb here. And I cut these out of cilantro, sunflower, and tide pool. Now I also have the Scripty Joy. I cut that out of Guava Cardstock, and then I used the outline die to cut some vellum to layer behind. So I'm just going to add this to that vellum with some liquid glue, and of course we can't forget the dot of the J. And I think this is gonna look really good with those colorful bulbs. Now, I did feel like this one needed something extra to it. I wanted those other colors to make sure they were all in there. So what I did was I grabbed that string of lights that I cut out of the string of lights backdrop. Remember where I cut it out to make space for the Mary? That's what this is. And I thought it would be cute to have that across the corner. But of course, once I had it in that corner, I kind of wanted it in the other corner. Now the string of lights, the mini string of lights didn't quite do it because I wanted some of those kind of curly Q shapes. So all I did was I took my scrap piece of white paper where I cut out my snowflakes and everything and just cut another one of those lines from the backdrop. And I'm just figuring out kind of where I want it to be. And this is what I decided on. So I have, 3 bulbs in the top, 4 bulbs in the bottom, and it just kind of frames it up a little bit, which I think is really nice. And it is overhanging the edge a little bit, but don't worry, I'll trim those off here in just a little bit. But this gave me a place for some more of those colors of bulbs because right now I don't have the orange or the purple in here, and I just really wanted this to match the other 2 cards I created. So I can bring in those other colors. I avoided adding any green because that's the largest bulb on this card. So I pulled in the guava, the purple, and the orange that I didn't have. Now for my big bulbs here, I want these to hang like they're hanging off the top of the card. And to do this, I'm going to pull in some white hemp twine. Now the little hangers I cut for these bulbs have that little hole and I'm going to thread it through the hole and then I am going to tape this down onto the back of the bulb so it doesn't go anywhere. And I'll do this for all 3 bulbs. You do want to make sure that your tape isn't overhanging the side and that it is completely hidden on the back. So I went ahead and did the same thing for my other 2 bulbs. I'm going to trim off my twine here and do the same process with a little bit of tape on the back, threading it through that hole and just holding in place. So now I can add these to my card base. And actually what I did, on this one I used a glue dot as well as liquid glue. And the reason for this is I want to make sure it's stuck down really well. And since I have that washi tape, I know the liquid glue is going to stick it down really well, but I also want it to stay in place and not shift around. And that's why I used a little bit of the dry adhesive right onto the cardstock where I don't have tape. I know that dry adhesive is not going to stick to that tape because it's kind of slick. So that's why I used both adhesives. Basically, one to hold it in place immediately while the liquid glue dries. Now for the hangers, I'm going to pull those up across the top of the card, add a little bit of liquid glue where that string is going to be and kind of get that string into the liquid glue, and then hold it in place on the back with a little bit of removable adhesive tape. This will just hold it in place while that glue dries, and once that glue dries, I can trim off the excess piece at the top of the card. So I've let that glue dry and then I will just trim everything off. I'm trimming off the excess string that hangs off from the paper string of lights. And then now my glue is dry and I've removed that removable tape and I can just trim off the twine at the top of the card. So now to move on to all my sentiments. For the Scripty Mary, I cut this from some gold sparkle cardstock. I'm going to layer it onto a vellum outline just like the Scripty Joy. And then the next thing I did was I actually cut the Scripty Mary from white as well. And I layered that onto the back. So I'm kind of making a vellum sandwich between gold sparkle on top, vellum in the middle, and then the white on the back. And this just did a couple things for me. It kind of lifted that vellum up a little bit off of that dark blue background, but it also gave me a place to put my liquid adhesive. Sometimes I feel like even though you kind of have that die cut piece on top to hide the adhesive, on vellum it likes to kind of squish out. So this gave me the perfect place to put my adhesive and it's nice and clean. Now for my snowflake card, I used Henry's ABCs to cut out the word cheer from some silver sparkle cardstock. I just laid those on my card in the placement where I wanted, picked them up with some removable Scotch tape, added some liquid glue to the back, and now I'm putting all those letters back in place. I'm going to give them a moment to kind of set and dry, and then I'll pull off that removable Scotch tape and my sentiment will be perfect. Now I'm doing the same thing with the Scripty Joy that I did with the Mary. I'm just adding that white piece on the background, but I'm doing something a little funny, which you don't have to do, but I'm just this way. I'm marking where the string is, and I'm going to cut that piece out so that the string kind of has a channel to go through. I don't think you have to do this, but I also didn't want a little bump in my sentiment where I'm gluing it over the twine. So that's why I did this. It's just kind of an extra step, and I just marked it with my pencil so I knew where to trim. And now you can see when I get that on the back, you see how I have like a little channel that's going to go right over my twine. So I'll just add this with liquid glue, making sure that twine is through that little channel that I created. And now I don't have any bulk behind my joy sentiment. Now I wanted this one to match the others because I did glitter with the others. Now I did actually try some sparkle cardstock, but I still really liked the guava colors. So I'm adding some stardust stickles all over that Scripty Joy so that my sentiment is nice and sparkly, just like the other two cards, and they look like a set. So here are my 3 Winter Lights holiday cards, and you could totally stop here, but I wanted to add some more sparkle, some more embellishments, so I pulled out my mini snowflakes die and some scraps of pixie dust cardstock, so I have that white sparkle cardstock. And I'm just embellishing just a bit more. So I have these really tiny sparkly snowflakes, and I think these go perfect with the white strings of the lights and that sparkly metallic kind of snowy look in the background. I really liked these little tiny snowflakes added to this big snowflake card. I think that was really cute. You could always use some sequins or some gems to add some embellishment and even more sparkle as well. And then, of course, I'll add some to that third card. So these cards were inspired by Winter Lights, which is the display at the North Carolina Arboretum. And what I love about them is that it is not Christmas specific, that it is just holiday, winter, and that is what I tried to accomplish with this set of cards. You could change up the colors, you can make them for any holiday that you celebrate or just for winter. I just think that they turned out so pretty and I love the holiday lights. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope you've been inspired to maybe try this out and pull out all of your strings of lights and make some fun holiday cards. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.